Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Lightspeed Lawn Care Marketing Podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. If you are listening on your phone, make sure to leave us a rating and a review in your podcast app of choice. I am sitting down today with Jason Creel. You know him from Lawn Care Life, Alabama Lawn Pros. And we are going to talk about the process that he has gone through a couple of times now of building a business and selling it and moving to a new territory and building a business. So I just thought that was a really interesting story. And I don't know a lot of guys that have that story. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about it, Jason.
Yeah, appreciate it, Cody, having me on. And I will say, just as initial comment, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. It wasn't like you made it sound like great, like, yeah, I built up that big, huge business and sold it for millions of dollars, and then thought it was so easy I'd do it. It wasn't necessarily like that. I didn't really intend to sell any of them, but anyway, the people who can actually build a business with the intent of selling it and making huge profits and then repeating that process again, those people are pretty impressive. I haven't figured out how to do that, but I will say, it's like playing golf or something. You might miss the first putt, but if you putt it again, you might make it the second time. So I'm on my third lawn business. So I will say the third one's gone better than the first two. So you do learn some stuff.
Yeah. So first business, what was the motivation to sell? Was it just that you guys were moving?
No, the first business, okay. I had somebody approach me about buying it, and it was just kind of like, my philosophy is pretty much most everything I have is for sale, including my major organs, if somebody offered enough money. Yeah. So it was kind of like, okay, if you want to pay me that for it, I'll take it, and I mean, it wasn't like astronomical amount of money, but it was six figures, for something, which for me at the time was huge. Now, I didn't handle that money very well and tried a different venture and failed at that. And so it was more of a learning experience than anything. But yeah, I was mowing grass and I had gotten frustrated with mowing grass because I made a lot of mistakes. But it was like every year, if I made a lot of money, I felt like I paid a lot of taxes. And I just kept not felt like I was getting anywhere. Life was more expensive. I got married, started having kids and houses and mortgages and everything, so it was so I'd actually taken a full-time job for the first time since I'd had a lawn business. And I had a kind of a crew chief that was running the lawn business. So at the time when they approached me about selling, I was like, well, I'm working this full-time job. I'll sell this. And it just made sense at that time.
Yeah. So I feel like you underplayed the business a little bit. If it was a six-figure purchase price, that's not, selling a couple of routes. That is they were purchasing a real business.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was heavily owner driven. Now, again, I had pulled back and was overseeing it, and it was still profitable with me overseeing it, not necessarily being involved, but it had some flaws, and then unfortunately the guy who bought it didn't actually go very well for him, and nobody. I think it ended up being almost a lose-lose situation. It was a win for me in selling. I was happy to sell it, and just didn't transition well after that. But then for him, he didn't transition well into it, and it was so unfortunately it didn't have a happy ending necessarily.
So then round 2, you come back and start another business in the green industry. Tell us a little bit about the motivation for that and how that went.
Okay. So before I ever started a lawn business, I probably had a dozen different jobs out of college and stuff. I have a college degree, but they were all bad. They were all terrible. I had no idea how to get a decent job and how to market myself. So anyway, when I started a lawn business, it was like by far the best job I'd ever had. I mean, both from I just kind of a fit for me, and also the money side of it. It wasn't great, but I was like, compared to what I was been doing for job, I had weekly paychecks sometimes that would be $200 some maybe, and with a candy bar, they'd send me a candy bar. I was like, I wish you'd keep your candy bar and give me an extra $1 on my measly paycheck, But so when I started mowing grass,
I got to pay rent.
Yeah, I mean, it was great when I started mowing. I was like, this is by far more. You make more in a day than I would normally get in a week. So anyway, I did get a job working in computer type stuff, which is what my degree was in, and it was okay, but I was bored out of my mind. So anyway, when I sold my business, I wanted to keep just a portion of that, I guess, as a fallback for me. So actually, after I sold, I didn't stay at the job very much longer. I worked there basically a year. Really didn't enjoy it. And so I kept a small territory, the lawn business in the same area, but I had a non-compete agreement. So I was very restricted to this small town that had about 2,000 people in it. Maybe. So I had like 20 customers or something. So basically I was doing that 2 days a week, maybe out mowing. And then I tried to start a coupon book fundraising company, which I would not recommend to anybody. And that did not go. So I spent a year basically trying to start this coupon book fundraising company, mowing 2 days a week with my new lawn business, which, essentially was just a portion of my old lawn business, but I changed the name and had a small area. And after failing at the coupon book business, tried that for about a year. And I say failed, I mean, I might have broke even, but if you spend a year to break even, that's basically a failure, in my opinion.
A lot of time tied up in $0.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't think that year 2 was going to be much better. So it was kind of like, cut your losses. Like this, it's not working. Now if year 1 you break even and year 3 you make $1 million, then hey, year 1 was just the growing pains. But I think year 2 was going to look very similar to year 1. So I got rid of those coupon books and was thankful. I was about boycotted coupons since then. I just nothing wrong with it, but it's just a little bitter taste. So I was still mowing a couple days a week, but then after. And I was able to grow a little bit, but then it was like we decided to relocate as a family. And so we moved 2 hours away. And when doing that, you really can't take it with you kind of thing. So I did sell that to another guy and kind of mentored him a little bit. He was just getting going. And we relocated, and I had to start, round 3 at that point.
Mm-hmm. So if someone is thinking about selling their business, because I think we hear a lot, like there's plenty of books that you can go read, or like, documentary series you can watch about like huge businesses changing hands and like mergers and that kind of thing. But I don't feel like there's as much around, the kind of businesses that guys like you and me build that are, substantially smaller than that, not on the radar of Comcast or whatever. What would you tell someone who's thinking about selling? Like, what's the first thing they should consider when they're thinking about doing that?
Yeah. Sometimes you'll hear people say in the lawn business that like, if you don't have your customers under some written contract, then it's not worth anything. I don't really agree with that. I don't think you have. I personally don't do contracts unless it was like a commercial account or something like that. But I'm not. If my customer now wants to spray their yard 7 times a year and it's $400, we're not signing any piece of paper. It's like if they want to fire me, they can fire. And I don't think you have to make it transferable. I mean, obviously if you're basing it on large commercial accounts that pay you year round, and you're saying this is a $50,000 account, this is a $40,000, I can see where a contract would be very handy in trying to sell that, because if they cancel on you, then that could be difficult. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a lot of transactions, they want to see your taxes and how much money is it making. And so if you, so it would be this is not the only reason not to cheat on your taxes. There are other reasons. They're also good. But if you just get cash under the table all the time, and you say at the end of the year, he's like, I got 400 yards and I made $10,000 this year. That's all I made, Well, that doesn't translate very well to selling, because you've been cheating. And then anyway, so I mean, like legitimate numbers, and that may be in a sense where, like, if you know you want to sell one day, potentially you hire a bookkeeping service to not just, I have an accountant that handles my year-end taxes and all that, but if you had a bookkeeping service that could really have some detailed profit and loss statements, all and say, look, here's some actual numbers on what this business does. So that's one thing. I think too, one thing I didn't realize, even now, like doing weed control and fertilization, like if you got 300 customers and you make $100 and some $1,000 or whatever, it's worth some percentage of your revenue. You'll hear everything from 40 cents on the dollar to a dollar for dollar, annual revenue. So, what I'm saying? If your business made $150,000, it's worth $150,000 if it's a dollar, or maybe if it's worth 50% of that and it's worth $75,000. Well, from everything I've been told, as you get larger, you start generating $1 million in revenue, and then that number goes up. So your larger businesses are going to be worth more. So, I tell people now when I'm thinking about selling or how to an exit strategy, I guess you would put on. For me, there's kind of a couple strategies. Like what I'm doing, I'm small and I'm doing YouTube stuff and all this other, but I'm trying to be extremely profitable as a small business and take money and invest it, and just IRAs and stock market and all this. And again, that works sometimes it doesn't. The other strategy, I have a friend that's doing this, he's trying to scale and he's trying to acquire other businesses. I've sold customers to him, and he wants to get big because, again, if you're trying to sell, if you're making $200,000 revenue, I mean, it is worth something, but it's not worth a whole lot, honestly. I mean, you might get $100,000 for it, which is great, but I mean, that's not exactly going to put you in retirement mode. Where if you start generating seven figures, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, then you're generating $3 million a year in revenue, then your business might be worth $3 million. Well, that, and again, it's harder to get to $3 million in revenue, obviously, but that's where somebody like that has a little more aggressive plan. They're okay taking on debt. They're okay acquiring other businesses because they're looking at this bigger plan of one day that big national franchise is going to come offer me a dollar for dollar revenue or possibly more than that.
Yeah. So we're looking at, your papers need to be in order. You need to have been paying your taxes correctly, playing by the rules so that, you can, if you want to cash out, you can. And if you've been getting paid under the table, then that's not going to be when someone wants to look at your taxes to evaluate the business and there's no money there. It's not going to look great.
Like I've had people approach me almost every year, seems like, about buying my business. Well, and I've even considered selling it at some point, but when you go talk to them, the offers are usually pathetically low. And I'm like, let me understand your offer here. Now, you would like for me to take a serious pay cut and to hand you my business. Is that am I understanding you correctly here? If I will work for half price and come work for you and then give you my business, is that all right? Where do I sign? So I usually just leave those meetings frustrated and mad and like, please don't insult me and waste my time. But from their standpoint, and again, this is helping you learn how to sell one. Like they look at it as, I'm a solo operator, so they look at it as like, oh, solo operator, what good is that? Well, I look at it as like, man, I got like one of the greatest jobs of anybody I know. I wouldn't trade my job to be a doctor tomorrow for nothing. I mean, or a lawyer. No, forget it. I would do what I do over that any day because of the flexibility. And honestly, I think it pays almost the same. I mean, obviously there's some doctors, lawyers going to shatter what a line guy makes, but it pays pretty well, honestly. I mean, especially the weed control stuff, which I do. But when they're looking at it, it's like, hey, it's, if you paid the guy a salary, let's say you had to pay somebody $50,000 to run the route and all that, then they say, well, here's your profits. But then if you paid somebody this, and then your equipment's this, and depreciation, and they start naming all this stuff. By the time they get done, you made like $5,000 that year. I was like, what? You can call it whatever you want, but I'm not taking that, for nothing. And I'm not coming to work for you. And you just help me get more motivated next year to try to take your customers because it just annoys me. So anyway, but point being, if you eventually get your business to where you as the owner basically manage the company, and it looks like, okay, now if somebody acquires it, this thing's kind of running on autopilot a little bit. Obviously, you're still involved, but they know, like, I take over as the boss. You've already got the trucks in place. You've already got the crew in place. The systems are in place. Now it looks like something that's acquirable more so than like, hey, it's just one guy out there doing everything himself. That doesn't translate as easy. Now, again, I would argue that one guy doing all himself, like at the end of the day, those customers have value. Like this generates this much income per month, and that income per month is worth something to somebody. It may not be worth something to you, but I know, somebody will pay something for it. So don't sell yourself short either way. But I mean, it is more attractive if things kind of running on its own.
Yeah. If you're trying to build with the intent of selling, maybe at a lower, maybe you're not trying to get to 1, 2, 3 million, but you're trying to get to like half a million to sell. You're saying that it's very important to have the processes built out and the owner's involvement like scaled back pretty substantially so that you're appealing to who wants to come drop money on this business.
Yeah, I think that's a lot more attractive. And when they start looking at all the numbers and stuff. So anyway, yeah, if you can get up to 500,000 and got 3 trucks, that's not actually a crazy level to achieve, spraying yards like I do. I mean, one truck, I could go out there with one truck by myself, me, and generate $200,000 revenue. That's probably kind of average, honestly, if I filled up my schedule. So you can think if you had 3 trucks and it was generating $600,000 in revenue, and you had 3 guys making $50,000 a year, I mean, that's still attractive to somebody. I mean, that can be a pretty, somebody will pay something for that. So anyway, but again, if you got 50 customers, sometimes if you're just selling a small amount of customers, I might sell them for $200 a customer or something like that. And that's fine. I mean, it was like I was looking to downsize, somebody's looking to grow. I'm not selling my business name. Like in my situation, my company's called Alabama Lawn Pro. I have a very good Google ranking. I have a nice website. I have brand recognition in my town. Those things are worth something too, so it's, if they acquired my brand name, which I think I get calls all the time because it's Alabama Lawn Pro. I sound big and fancy, and I probably dominate the state of Alabama. But in actuality, I live in a small town in Alabama, work by myself. So somebody that was wanting to grow and acquire my brand, there's value to that as well.
Yeah. You said that you have, someone approach you about once a year trying to buy your business. How do you put out that you're open to that into the world so that these people come and find you? Yeah.
I don't think I ever, they just call you. I think they're just going through Google listings and calling every local lawn business in there. And because, I mean, in their situation, they're big. I think they're just calling all the small ones. And if they can pick up 200 customers for somebody and give them a lowball offer, they lowball 10 people. One of them says yes. They just got 200 more customers in their territory for a very cheap price. Now, one time I did actually sell some customers through a broker. And that has pluses and minuses. They do handle the transaction for you. Now, I feel like sometimes they don't always tell you the truth. Like in my situation, I was told, hey, we've got a big buyer. And I told him about my business and what I was looking to, get for it, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they said, oh, yeah, we've actually got somebody that's going to have a perfect fit for you that's looking for a business just like yours. And so all you got to do is sign here and we'll be your broker. So I signed. Well, guess what? That person didn't exist. I don't think it existed. I don't think there was ended up selling it to a friend of mine who had also been contacted by the same broker. He didn't know I was interested in downsizing. I didn't know he was interested in growing. And so we ended up having to pay a hefty commission to a broker to sell it to a friend of mine. And we basically put because they're telling me there's this big buyer out there, and that's how much money you want for your bid. I'm pretty sure he'll go for that. Sign here. Well, now I'm committed to this guy, and I wouldn't have been committed to him if my friend hadn't also signed with him, because I think the agreement was like, if I find my own buyer, I could have just sold it without paying commission. But then when I talked to my friend, he saw it on some listing or something, and he had already signed with them too. And so I was like, well, so we did the deal, and they did handle the transaction. I'm not saying they did anything terrible. They handled it. But anyway, so you can, there are brokers.
Well, and if you're selling to a stranger, it probably makes sense to use a legitimate third party. But when it's a friend, you're not worried about your friend.
Yes.
But disappearing with your customer list.
I just didn't appreciate that they basically led me to, I told them how much money I was looking for, and they led me to believe that, yes, we have somebody that would be interested in that. Well, I ended up having one call, like a Zoom call or something, with this potential buyer. He had no experience with lawn care. He'd been in like cleaning houses or something business. He had no experience with lawn care. He had no existing lawn care, and he was really not in it. I think he offered me like $20,000 or something. I said, I wouldn't sell you my truck for that. No, I'm not selling you my business for $20,000. So anyway, it was a pathetic offer.
That's crazy.
Not a real candidate at all. There was no other candidates. Weeks went by. I was like, where's these candidates lined up to buy they didn't exist. And my buddy bought it, and again, we're fine. Everything worked out. I think worked out for both parties. He's happy. He's again going on this path trying to grow a big business. I was trying to downsize and just I was at a place where I had to either grow and get multiple trucks going or shrink back down. And if I didn't have like a YouTube channel and all that, I might have chose to grow. But for me, I was like, I'm gonna shrink down and kind of go half lawn care, half YouTube and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I think that is a really valuable story to tell the people listening here. I really appreciate you coming on, answering some questions about that. There aren't a lot of guys that I can talk to about specifically like selling the size of and scale of business that you're talking about. Yeah. So I really hope that this was helpful to the guys listening. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I am happy to. Jason, you don't have to keep track of the comments. I'll follow up with you if anybody asks anything. But thanks so much for being on the show today, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Cody. I enjoyed it.